We at Cool Nerds Unite would like to thank you, the listener. If you have any comments and suggestions, please email us at coolnerdsunite.com.
Welcome everybody, fellow nerds. This is Cool Nerds Unite. We have a really great episode for you today. My name is Justin.
My name is Roderick.
And we are here with Ben Streaks, a.k.a. Young Muscle, a.k.a. Architecture in Tokyo.
Hello, everybody.
What's up, Ben?
Not much. Just excited to talk about things that I'm working on right now.
Oh, excellent.
Things that are going on, projects.
Cool. All right, my friend, bring us up to speed.
Past few weeks have been busy. I've been working, got a schedule down for a show that's coming up with my friend Joel. We're doing a 4-hour back-to-back set. We're opening up for a dubstep musician named Sleeper, kind of like old school underground dubstep.
Cool.
Working on a lot of demos right now for a few different labels that I'm very, very fond of.
Oh, that's great.
Awesome. So just to give you a little bit of just to give you, the audience, a little bit more background, Ben here is probably most commonly known as in the music scene as Architecture in Tokyo, which would be in the realm of the genre of vaporwave. I'm not sure, Roderick, are you familiar with vaporwave at all? Or?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great.
Very cool. Very cool music, man. Very cool. So, Ben, can you tell the listening audience where you're from? Are you from Detroit or?
I'm from Detroit. I originally grew up in the suburbs in Sterling Heights where I first started working on my music, but I ended up moving down to Detroit about 4 years ago when I was 18 to start college and to really get a hold on what I wanted to do down here.
Gotcha. And where are you going to school?
I'm going to school at Wayne State right now.
Okay, nice. And are you a music major there or another?
I am actually not. I'm a psychology major.
Nice.
I've always thought about music as a sort of like, do I want to pursue this academically? But music has always been, started off as a hobby and then progressed to something more serious later. So it was never my intended path to go down. I'd always loved psychology and that was my first choice, but music slowly became more involved in my life.
Yeah. So how long have you been making music then?
I have been making music since I was 16, so it has been 6 years.
Nice. So have you always was Architecture in Tokyo the first stage name or?
I actually, before I did Architecture in Tokyo, before I was doing disco and all that stuff, I had a bunch of projects that I never released. Or I think Bandcamp the website Bandcamp had popped up around that time. I did a bunch of noise industrial, drone, ambient kind of stuff for a long time, from 16 to maybe 18. I was doing a lot of one of my first inspirations was harsh noise acts like Merzbow and Masana that were it seemed very accessible because it felt like I didn't have to have any musical talent to be able to create noise.
It's fun just making because as far as the whole with especially electronic music as a genre, there's a lot more that you can do with it as far as just experimenting with the sonic experience, and especially with your background in psychology, there's definitely a lot you can play with the what goes on in the human brain and how a person can react to different sounds and different experiences that go along with that.
That's especially one of the first things that drew me to noise was the idea that all of these different pop and punk and stuff like that all had sort of a different kind of feel to them, of a different emotion, whereas noise felt like a complete absence of that. It was null of any sort of feeling except an extreme pursuit of the pushing the envelope as much as you can.
Yeah.
That's what artists do.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I feel like that's a good comparison to when you're at the DIA, for instance, and you're in one of the more older galleries and like Renaissance or medieval and or looking at classical art, and it's just like here's a painting of a garden, you have flower on the right, flower on the left, pillar, pillar. It's very, there's like a pattern to it, but then you get to the contemporary stuff and there's just like a splash of paint on the canvas. And
No, that's how I felt about the early noise stuff that I was doing, was that I felt like I wanted to join the ranks of people who were not trying to follow a pattern. They wanted to push the boundary and not conform to any sort of preset idea. Right. They wanted to, if at anything, offend the listeners who had come to listen to that. And part of me as a teenager was like, oh, that's so cool. They don't care about the listeners. They want to do what they want to do. And that attracted me. And I definitely, still even to this day, I still have that idea in the back of my mind of like, it's not all for the listeners. Part of this is what I want to do.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Is there someone in the music industry that you would like to work with?
In terms of
like collaborate, any type of collaboration?
There's definitely a few people I would like to collaborate with. My dream collaborations would probably do a few of my favorite producers, Blowan, who's on RNS Records, Randomer and Pangea, who are both on Hessel Audio. They all kind of make like really wonky, off-kilter techno influenced by like early garage and UK bass and dubstep. Kind of like they took influence from Detroit, but then mixed it in with a bunch of other regional influences that they had.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And yeah, Detroit definitely is. It's where techno was founded.
Techno capital.
Yeah, that is very cool. But do you have any scheduled performances?
I have one on August 3rd right now. The one I mentioned earlier, me and my friend Joel are playing back to back for 4 hours, and I've never done longer than a 2-hour set, so this is going to be interesting to see how this goes. 4 hours.
So you're going to be like mixing live on stage, or?
Yeah, it's at the Works. It's at the Works. We're going to be outside on the patio, and me and him are holding down the patio all night on August 3rd. I think it goes from 10 till 4. Hoping I don't have to work the next day, but even if I do, I'm going to...
I would definitely be there.
Yeah. So with of course, like, with any... most pop music, it's like, hey, you're going to have your guitarist on stage, a keyboardist, your singer. As an electronic musician, what kind of like instrumentation, if you will, or tools would you use on stage to...
I've always thought about what I would do if I did a live setup. I know like it's traditional for techno artists, especially when they're performing live, like techno artists, it's usually almost always their live modular gear that they have. All analog and stuff like that. But I always thought, at least with architecture in Tokyo, with all of the disco stuff that I'm doing, if I ever return to a live version of that, I would definitely want to have a live drummer and a live guitarist.
Oh, that'd be great. Cool. Yeah.
I already talked to one of my friends about being the live guitarist, because my original idea was to have him play guitar on some of the tracks that I was working on, some like disco edits, and then have him play over them. But then after that, I figured, after I pitched him that idea, I said, you know what? Well, if I ever perform live, would you just want to play guitar? Like, I'll send you the guitar tracks and you just learn them, and then we'll practice like once or twice a week. And plus, I have my drum machine too. I have this old school MPC 2000 drum machine. It's like 15 pounds of steel, and that's perfect for performing live because you can edit that on the fly without really worrying about anything.
Nice.
That's cool.
So do you ever use like turntables or anything like that?
I don't have my own pair right now, but I do. I've played on CDJs and turntables before. My record collection right now isn't that. It's not that well built up, not that fabulous. So I might have to hold out on playing vinyl for a while, just because I literally don't have enough for a set right now. But CDJs are a different story because I can just plug in my flash drive and I've got hours and hours and hours of stuff to play.
Yeah. I've definitely fooled around on those, like a Guitar Center. It's like, oh, I can just, pretend you just mess around and scratch around. And
I consider using CDJs as like a form of making music, even if it's not
totally,
your own.
Yeah.
Even just having that skill of being able to combine and mix songs together in a very coherent fashion that kind of tells a story, to me, is a sort of way of making art. Just like one would, sit down and play the drums or something.
That is definitely an art form. I think, even just listening to music, it can be very, not so much provocative, but it's also therapeutic.
No,
Would you say so?
I would definitely say so. One of my favorite quotes from, actually, hometown hero, Moody Man, one of my favorite quotes from him is, "It's not what you do with what you have, it's how you do it."
Wow, that's cool.
That is a really great
I
quote.
like that.
Yeah.
And that the first time I learned how to DJ, I was learning on really basic, like really, really early CDJs that had just gotten their USB function. So there was no like fancy faders or mixers or anything. It was just learning how to cut in and out of songs as fast as I could and mixing it as nice as I could with just, rudimentary stuff.
Just like also just like trying to find and just use your ear to listen for tracks that you think would sound good mashed up together.
That's exactly
Yeah.
it. I couldn't rely on any special effects or anything to kind of carry my way through. I really had to put my hands in there and know what I was working with before I could even, get down to mixing it.
How do you find inspiration to do what you do? In terms of, getting songs together. Do you have any inspirations?
I definitely do. At least with my early stuff, not even the noise stuff, but more of like the disco. The first thing that made me really want to make the architecture in Tokyo stuff was a few specific, the vaporwave movement that when I first started making music was like just emerging.
Was vaporwave the first genre that you? Oh wait, no, you said it was noise, right?
Yeah. Vaporwave, I would consider vaporwave a form of noise only because it's like kind of like plunderphonics, sample based, where it's not completely all original.
Yeah. Because you'll have artists like Macintosh Plus where it's pretty much just like 2 tracks slowed down, then doubled up and phased.
Yeah. And that, even then, like when I was working on noise, I was kind of more towards the ambient side, and a lot of vaporwave now with artists like Telepath and Enmesh remind me of the ambient music I was trying to make, where it was very sample based and very one of my influences is shoegaze. I love shoegaze. It's one of my favorite genres. When I first started out, it was like everything I made was soaked in reverb because I just wanted it to sound dreamy.
Yeah. Got that ethereal, atmospheric kind of.
And that, especially with like architecture in Tokyo stuff, a combination of that dreaminess of reverb and I think chillwave had just started popping up at that time too with artists like Panda Bear and Washed Out. Their work felt very accessible to me because I remember hearing them and thinking, oh my god, this is amazing. These guys are so good. And then learning online that they had made most of these songs with samples.
Yeah.
And thinking, well,
Like, I could do that too.
exactly.
Yeah.
Thinking, well, if they can do it with samples, why can't I do it with samples? So from like 16 to 18, I would spend every single day after school or during the summer locked up in my room in Ableton trying to work out how they did these songs and trying to mimic them as best as I could. I guess in terms of like contemporary stuff now with my influences, definitely living in Detroit, the whole original Detroit techno scene and everything that's popping up right now is a huge influence. I'm lucky enough to say that my friends are some of my influences, especially some of my friends that I've met now down here.
Oh, that's great.
It makes me feel good. When I'm listening.
Oh yeah. Well, especially with just like with the Motown and disco and techno, just being able to combine that and
That especially because like some of my biggest disco, the thing that drew me to disco was not only the chillwave thing, but some of my friends who I'd hung out with like at 16 or 17. My friend Jerry used to go by the name Mustache Jerry, and he used to spin only exclusively disco. And I think he was like 22 when I met him, and I was 16. He was bringing me to parties that I definitely should not have been to when I was at 16. But him and my friend Dave and all of them were taking me to these wild parties when I was 16 and 17. And I was going to all these parties that were playing like almost exclusively disco, and there was all sorts of crazy stuff happening. And in my head, I was like, I want to do this. I want to spin disco, and I want to go to all these crazy parties and see all these crazy things happening.
Yeah. And then music can definitely be a like a conduit to just access a lot of that fun craziness in life. But vaporwave is just one of those like really interesting genres, especially to me, because I have this huge interest in internet culture and memes, and just vaporwave and memes they seem to just go perfectly hand in hand.
I agree.
Yeah.
My original fascination with vaporwave was it reminded me a lot of being a really, really little kid and first discovering the internet and seeing like things like Japanese texting, being like, what is this?
Yeah.
What are these weird symbols?
It's like kanji and
Yeah, and then slowly learning like, oh, there are other cultures, and poking around on the web and finding like, finding out like, oh, Pokemon's a Japanese thing.
Yeah.
Oh, these are where these symbols are from. Finding out that there was a whole world around me that I didn't even know of. And especially like when I mean early, like when I mean little kid, I mean like
dial-up internet.
yeah, when you could still hear like the AOL like
Yeah.
kind of thing. But it very much brings out those memories of early childhood and being fascinated by the internet and like, finding like all these web pages of like music that I'd never heard of and, pictures of the pyramids from Egypt and like things from Japan and pictures of the Eiffel Tower from Paris that I was like,
Yeah.
I never knew. I've only seen this in books. I've never seen this on the internet. I didn't know there was a whole culture around it.
It's such an interesting thing to have, especially for our generation, growing up with the internet, just being at I guess the internet technically has been around, I think, since the 60s or 70s.
Yeah.
But having it around in such a way where you can share music, you can share videos and pictures and images, and growing up with it having such like a huge, just like kind of like, I just always use this as an example when I talk to people from different generations than myself. When I started high school, my school's library used to sell floppy disks to save your word assignments on.
I used to buy a lot of those from
Yeah.
school.
And that was like a thing. Like you'd bring like 50 cents or a buck, and then you'd buy a handful of floppy disks to save your word assignments on. But then when I graduated high school, it was like the cloud was the thing, or you had USBs, and that was the standard. And I don't even think you can buy computers anymore with like a floppy drive or
No.
That's
I
I actually
haven't came across that as of yet. I would like to.
even my old my drum machine, the MPC, I just recently switched out. It had a floppy drive, and
Oh yeah.
I had to buy an external floppy drive for my computer so that I could burn drum samples onto the floppy drive.
Dang.
And the actual like external one I got broke, so I figured, all right, never mind, screw this. I'm just gonna I found a USB emulator of a floppy drive online.
That's great.
Took the old floppy drive out of my drum machine and put in the new USB one. So now all I have to do is just plug in a USB to my drum machine.
Oh, that's perfect. I remember going over to my uncle's house as a kid, and he had like just one of these old like electronic keyboards, and it has a floppy drive. I'm like, why does this keyboard have a floppy drive? Like my dad has, I have like electronic keyboards, but like, why would it need a floppy drive?
I remember like some of my early childhood memories are like, I remember my dad bringing me to an internet cafe because of course, nobody had like the really nice computers in their house. So
Yeah.
he'd take me to the internet cafe and, get all his IT work done. And then I would be playing Teletubbies or something on the computer.
Like Neopets or
I remember like the early I don't know why this always stuck out of my memory, but I remember going to the internet cafe and playing on the Teletubbies website, and the Teletubbies website looks like it had been made in like MS Paint or something.
Yeah.
Because it was still so low quality.
It's like I think Space Jam. It's still the same exact website from when that movie
Yeah,
came out in like
yeah.
'96 or '97.
I remember too, like
Yeah.
poking around GeoCities and Angel Fire
Oh,
before
man.
both of those websites kind of
Yeah.
closed down.
But you know what? Listening to your story, I really think the reason why it sticks out so vivid in your mind is because that memory was very special to you.
Oh, definitely. Today now, and this might sound a little privileged, but like today now, the internet just doesn't feel as special as when I first, encountered all of these like GeoCities and Angel
Yeah.
Fire of like this unknown internet culture where like I wanted to know like how did people make these websites? How did things like this pop up? And then through those websites, learning about all sorts of different things, cultures from around the world,
Yeah.
and music I had never heard of that I don't think I would have been exposed to unless the internet had been there.
Right, and especially if been there, and I think in that format, because today now it's just with social media being like
Yeah.
the biggest chunk of the internet, at least as far as how I consume it. It's like all your news, all the
Yeah.
artwork, all the music that you're listening to, like anything about TV shows, it's coming in through like either Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or
Yeah.
something like that. But before that, I think I'm just trying to like think about like, man, how did I use the internet before Facebook? Like, well, there was MySpace, but I wasn't getting a lot of news from MySpace. It was just, hey, friends are, posting surveys they took on, or maybe they'll post
Yeah.
some pictures or
That I remember one of my early experiences, maybe when I was like 12 or 13, was learning about the website. I think it's called Webs now, but it was originally called Free Webs. And I remember learning about that and learning about HTML coding and being like, oh my God, I can create my
Yeah.
own website. And then trying to learn like as much as I could about HTML coding. And
that's you're flirting with a 6-figure skill right there.
no, I regret not learning more about like CSS coding and stuff
Yeah.
like that. I remember doing a lot of that and learning like how to make playlists, and I would compile my favorite playlist of like songs that I liked and then put them on my website of like all my different favorite things, send them to my friends when I think MySpace was still like the bigger thing.
Yeah.
So I would send them to my friends on MySpace.
I was just going to say, because you mentioned playlists, did you ever go to the website or use the website Project Playlist?
I've never used that. I've used 8-Tracks before, but it's been a long time since I've used 8-Tracks, but I used to make playlists on there too.
Yeah. Because I remember, I'm not sure if 8-Tracks worked similar to this, but with Project Playlist, you would just make a playlist and on that website, and then there would be an audio player would list all the tracks within that playlist, and then it would give you the HTML that you would just copy and paste into your MySpace.
It was definitely something like that, because I remember like when I would put it in the HTML, like after I'd put it in, a little player bar would pop up at the top of the screen, like when you loaded my page, and it would automatically start playing music.
Yeah.
For a long time, I actually had it set to like the noise song, so as soon as you loaded my page, it was like. But it was definitely that's like one of the making playlists and using the free websites.
Yeah.
I would use that a lot. Use the internet a lot with like GeoCities and stuff to download games too. Download Mega Man and like Doom and other games.
Oh man, Doom. Oof.
So is there a format of music that you would like to learn to play or interested in playing maybe someday, maybe not right now, but sometime in the future?
I've definitely always thought about some of my biggest influences that aren't necessarily electronic are punk bands, because
Oh yeah, I like punk bands.
even with the techno I'm making now, it's like very influenced by more aggressive music like punk and even like black metal and sludge metal and noise rock, stuff like that. From like 14 or not even throughout my whole teenage years, like everything I listened to was hardcore punk or like some sort of aggressive music. I've always thought about making a noise rock band because a few of my very close friends that I've known since high school, who I still see like every day, we've mentioned it before, and we've always really wanted to start like a black metal project or a noise rock project, but we just haven't, especially with me, because like all I have is my drum machine and keyboard and a few other synthesizers. It's like I can't do much with that because that's more of like,
Yeah, it's not. Those aren't really considered traditional punk instruments. It's not. Yeah,
yeah.
Make it happen.
that,
I think it would. I think that
Go
just
ahead.
Work
Yeah.
fantastic.
that well, one of the things we've discussed is like my friend Tyler can play bass really well, and my friend Armand plays guitar. So like,
Cool.
we've obviously got
Yeah,
those two.
got all the
points.
elements there.
And they've always asked me, they're like, well, why don't you just use your drum machine? And I was like, drum machine, if I joined a live band, it would be like me pressing one button and then just standing there
Just,
and
like, waiting
watching
for
them
the
And
play.
cue.
Justin sings, so here we go. And then
be
we
fun.
have Gavin here who plays guitar as well. Sound Lord. There you go.
So what punk bands do you think were big influences to you? Or
Definitely the band Ice Age. Even to this day, their album New Brigade came out in 2011. Huge influence. I remember the thing that drew me to them was the first pictures of them, because they're from Copenhagen. First pictures of them doing like their U.S. tour was like them with like earrings torn out of their ears where their ears are bleeding, and like
Wow.
pictures of them with like black eyes and bloody noses, and I guess like fans would like jump up and like grab them and they'd just like sock their fans in the face and be like, don't touch me.
it sounds like kind of like mindless self-indulgence, like kind of the stuff they would do. Or
That's exactly, they did not care at all about
Yeah.
what people thought of them. And I guess that ties back around to the influences, is like me being like, oh, that's so cool. They don't care
Yeah.
what, they don't
I don't
care.
think you would like to be socked in the face.
No, not at all.
Someone pull your ear. And
They
I don't
definitely,
think you would like that too much.
they've definitely calmed down. I saw them on New Year's Eve, and they're definitely, they put out a few albums since their first one, and they've definitely calmed down, because I think they were all like 17 or 18 when they first started with their first
Okay.
album.
oh yeah,
Some growth and some maturity there.
Yeah, I think now the lead singer's married, so like he's definitely
yeah.
calmed down.
so you got a wife to go home to, and she doesn't want bleeding, want you bleeding all over the house.
Well, honey, it's all part of my life here. I'm just going to continue to bleed.
It's like funny thinking, yeah, because you have like Green Day or Blink-182.
Oh, yeah.
It's like those guys are married and they have kids now, and
Yeah.
It's almost hard to believe, but
Yeah.
yeah very true.
I think besides Ice Age, definitely Lightning Bolt. That was my first concert, was seeing the band Lightning Bolt, and my friend broke his glasses and I lost one of my shoes.
Oh, wow.
that sounds like a great story.
That Lightning Bolt was definitely a crazy experience. I was 14 when I went, and I don't think I was ready to be in that.
So that was your first concert, just period? Like you never went to any other type of musical?
No, my first real concert that I went to alone. I had gone to concerts with like my mom and stuff, but I never. My actual first real concert experience was Lightning Bolt, which
Gotcha.
is like super aggressive noise band. I remember someone was in a wheelchair at the very front of the audience, and when they started playing, like people were pushing up against each other so hard they were falling over his wheelchair.
Oh, my
man.
God.
And
Really?
It was in a teen community center, and the ceiling was probably about as low as this ceiling. So people were like, when they would stage dive, they'd literally like get thrown into the ceiling tiles and like, bounce back down.
Wow.
I don't know why the
That's intense.
I don't know why the teen community center decided to have them there, but I don't think they've ever had anyone play there after that.
Oh,
because
geez.
I wouldn't think
realized
so.
they realized it was a really bad idea.
Wow.
So Roderick, what was your first real concert?
My first real concert was Beck. To see
Beck.
Beck. Yeah,
Really?
that was
Oh,
about
nice.
Yeah, Beck was one of those concerts. I was like, okay, I've always liked this music. So it's about time to go to a concert. And to see him up there performing, it was great.
Yeah, especially an artist like Beck. That would be
I love Beck. Beck is crazy good. That's probably one artist that I would kill to see is Beck.
And he's very good. He's a very good performer. And he gets into music. He loves the audience. You know, he takes time in between sets, talk to the audience. It makes you feel like, hey, this guy really cares. I spent about $35. He really cares.
Man, that sounds like a bargain today.
Yeah. What about you?
Let's see. Well,
What about you, Justin?
the very first concert I ever went to, I know this, I mean, it's a concert that my parents got tickets for, but I still remember it just because it was the first time I saw a band where it's like, oh, I've heard them on the radio. I was maybe 5 or 6 years old, and it was before it was DTE Energy Center. It was still Pine Knob, and I got to see the Doobie Brothers.
Oh, wow.
I heard they would give a great performance back in the day, too.
And I just remember like being a kid and thinking like, whoa, like these guys are famous. I've heard them on the radio and all this. Like my parents have their CDs and stuff. Like seeing them on stage and just all those guitars lined up. And
What about you, Gav? Sound Lord, chime in. Your first concert, my friend.
I really can't remember other than an embarrassing one. I went to a Christian rock festival called Ichthus.
wait, like it was named after the fish?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Named after the fish. And
That's great.
I was like 13 and I was like, this is cool. I feel weird about some of the things on people's T-shirts, but you know, like,
Or there you have it. There you have it.
I definitely think what you said about like good performances definitely stuck with me because not even Lightning Bolt or any of that, but around 16 or 17 I saw Beach House, and not to talk badly about them or anything, but
Yeah.
I remember going and being so excited in line and then seeing the opening act and being like, wow, this band is great, and then seeing them perform and thinking in my head like, man, I wish I was just at home right now. I feel like I wasted money on this ticket. They were not an entertaining band to see live at all. And that stuck with me as like, okay, if I want to go to a concert, I want it to be like crazy fun.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
I
want to be memorable, man.
I remember
good
standing
way.
around in the crowd for Beach House, looking at my watch, thinking like, when is this going to be over? I want to go home. And
There's definitely a lot of artists out there, and it's just what you hear on the album is not going to be what you hear when you see them live.
exactly.
And sometimes it's like, wow, there's a lot in post-production, and there's still a lot of talent and skill that they put into the production of that album. But when you pay money to see them live, you want to there's some expectation that there's going to be some differences.
Yeah.
And there's going to be some differences in instrumentation. Like they're not going to have a full orchestra necessarily. Some parts are going to be pre-recorded. Some parts are just going to be omited. Like if there's one guy singing all the harmonies, unless he has a backup track, it's just going to be that one vocal line. I have to say I haven't personally experienced any concerts where I saw it live, unless it was like a YouTube video of like, wow, this band really sucks live. But man, I've definitely heard a lot of interesting, disappointing live concert stories of, I'm just gonna say this, great artist, great musician, but I've heard a lot of stories of Bob Dylan concerts, for instance, not being that great, especially today. And like I say this with the utmost respect. Love Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
But like, hey, like people would say, hey, we couldn't really hear him. I wasn't sure if he was mic'd correctly, and just his voice isn't as great as it used to be. But still, it's Bob Dylan. You go to experience the.
Wow.
Yeah, you go for that experience of saying, hey, I saw Bob Dylan live, but at the same time, it's you want to be able to actually hear what you came to see.
That is awful.
Like trying to think of some other bands, but or groups, but I don't want to like bash anyone because it's Or like Dragon Force, for instance. So much of Dragon Force isn't done in post production that when you see it live, it's
I almost went to go see them the last time they came around to Michigan just because I wanted to. I thought it would be so funny to see Dragon Force. They're just like, to me, they're the epitome of like ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because anytime I think of them, I think of like Guitar Hero when I was 12. Like,
oh man,
everyone's like, Dragon Force is the hardest band on the whole Guitar Hero like playlist. You got to play that song. Yeah, like, you got to 5-star it.
Yeah, there's so many YouTube videos of people 5-starring Through the Fire and Flames, and
So what would your utmost comments or statement that you would make or tell someone that's getting or want to get into the music industry? What would you suggest that they do?
I definitely, to any up and coming or aspiring musicians, I would definitely say things take a lot of time and it takes a lot of practice, but if you aim for something and you really put your dedication into it, there's no doubt that you might not get where you want to be, but you'll definitely land among where you want to be. You'll be somewhere on the spectrum of where you first envisioned yourself. Even if it's not necessarily like, nobody's going to go from like learning Ableton one day to playing a huge club like Berghain the next day. But if you put in the practice, you'll definitely end up where you want to go.
I think that's great. That's great advice.
That's cool, man.
All right, well, thank you so much, listeners, for tuning in to Cool Nerds Unite.
Cool Nerds Unite!
Yeah. That was Architecture in Tokyo, a.k.a. Young Muscle, a.k.a. Ben Streaks.
Yes.
And my name is Justin.
My name is Roderick.
My name is Ben, and it has been a pleasure. My Facebook is Architecture in Tokyo. My SoundCloud is Architecture in Tokyo /Young Muscle. If you Google Architecture in Tokyo, I'm sure that, as well as YouTube videos, some my pages will pop up if you Google them. And my booking email is youngmuscledetroit@gmail.com.
Wonderful, my friend.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank
for
you so
coming
much.
in.
Yeah.
Oh, of course, my pleasure.
Thank you so much, Ben. And remember, as always,
Stay nerdy.
The music featured on this particular podcast episode is by my friend Ben Streaks, a.k.a. Architecture in Tokyo. Make sure to go and purchase his music at amdiscs.com. That's AMDISCS.com. Thank you.